Hello and welcome back to Perspectives. On today's show, we have our usual roundup of the big stories around the world relevant to the Sikh community. And as the 4th anniversary of the terrible terrorist attack against protesting Sikh farmers by the son of a BJP MP passes, we take a look at the two-tiered justice in India, which allows Hindutva terrorists to evade justice whilst innocent Sikhs languish in jail. And talking of two-tiered justice, here in the UK we ask why Gurdwaras are not offered the same level of funding to provide security against hate crimes as mosques and synagogues. Again, signs of the British government treating our Sikh population as second-class citizens. Well, all this and more on today's show, but joining me as always is our very own correspondent in Canada, James Cousineau. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Angus, and good morning to our viewers out there. As always, I'm out here stirring it up. I don't know whose hate list I'm on more, Modi's, Putin's, or now the supporters of the ostrich farm. It seems everybody's all excited these days, but anyways, I'm glad to be here where we've got such an amazing and friendly audience. Well, I hope everybody had a great weekend. Angus, back to you in the studio.
Indeed, and James and I together will be bringing you our perspectives on the daily news affecting the Sikh community across the world. And of course, as usual, we'll take a look at loads of great comments at the end of the show, which have been filling up below the video. So thank you very much for those, as always. Right, James, loads to get through as always. What are you going to start us off with this morning?
We are going to go on a whirlwind trip around the globe again, Angus. There is a lot to report on, and we'll try to keep it fairly brief and on time tonight. But let's get started so we can do that. Of course, we are looking at various stories from around the globe, and those include, of course, the faith across borders and the emotional roller coaster for the Sikh pilgrims in India who were first denied and then, after significant public pressure, granted permission to visit the sacred Nankana Sahib shrine in Pakistan, highlighting the tense intersection of faith and geopolitics. We'll also take a look at a test of principle, and that is a sudden policy reversal in the United States banning military members from having beards for most part, and also looking at how that actually is setting back the policy by decades. So we'll just quickly take a look, as Angus covered this in last week's episode. If you didn't see it, I say go to our archives and check it out. But we'll take a look at the real pillars and time points that made a difference and where it's being set back to. Now, of course, we know the politics of identity. Also, we are looking at examining the UK's Sikh community as it navigates a divisive political landscape, achieving record representation in Parliament while simultaneously demanding more accountability from its leaders and reorganizing for global advocacy. Now, as we chart for the future, a look at the Sikh community in Singapore we'll also visit, and that is an engaging activity in forward-thinking intergenerational dialogues to address internal challenges like educational disadvantages for youth and evolving care for the elderly. And finally, we will take a look at the quiet frontier. That is the existential struggle of the small Sikh community in Japan, facing the daily pressures of assimilation in a highly homogenous society amid rising anti-immigrant sentiment. So let's get moving on, as we'll also take a quick peek, if we have time, at the journey of self-discovery, a story about a documentary that came out a few years ago, and we'll talk about that very briefly, and Seva Reimagined, a hopeful look at the next generation through the story of a 16-year-old diaspora teen who founded a clothing brand to raise funds for flood relief in Punjab. Very exciting and very inspirational as to what they're doing. So let's get started looking at the community at a crossroads. And that is, of course, looking first to the border between India and Pakistan, as, of course, next month is a very important time. For Sikhs worldwide, the annual journey to the Gurdwara Janam Asthan in Nankana Sahib, Pakistan. This is the birthplace, of course, of Guru Nanak Dev. Now, it is an event of immense spiritual importance for the Sikh community. In late 2025, we are well aware that the journey became a barometer of the fraught relationship between India and Pakistan. Now, in September, India's Ministry of Home Affairs denied permission for the Sikh pilgrimage groups known as Jathas to travel to Pakistan for the November celebration, citing prevailing security scenario that we just still don't wrap our heads around because it's not a security issue. Regardless, though, the decision sent a wave of shock and disappointment through the community. For devotees like a 54-year-old Kanwaljit Kaur Dillon, who had been eagerly preparing for the trip, it was a deeply personal blow, a spiritual aspiration dashed by the government advisory. Now, the response from the Sikh leadership was swift and unified in a rare display of solidarity. Religious and political bodies from across the spectrum, including the SGPC, the Akal Takht, leaders from the SAD, Congress, and the AAP parties, raised a collective voice of protest, something that is unusual for everybody to come together on that. Now, they framed a powerful argument asking why high-profile cricket matches, of course, between India and Pakistan could proceed, while a sacred pilgrimage was deemed too risky. Now, faced with this sustained pressure, the Indian government reversed its position on October the 2nd, granting permission for the pilgrimage to proceed. The reversal was hailed as a victory for the united voice of faith. However, it came with strict conditions and a multi-layered vetting process for each pilgrim and a rule that only those in an official Jatha would be allowed to cross at the Attari border. Despite the riders, the feeling was one of relief. A powerful demonstration that on matters of core religious importance, a united community could effectively influence the state policy. So a big, big win. From the victory for religious expression in South Asia, we turn to a sudden and profound challenge to the Sikhs in the United States.
James, sorry.
On September 30th, as Angus...
Sorry to interrupt, James. Just on behalf of the audience, they'll be wondering why the screen isn't changing. Just one of our technical issues. Sometimes
that was my fault. I got going on my talk here, and I forgot to rotate my screen. My apologies.
Indeed.
Thanks, Angus,
the audience will be wondering
up.
why the screen hasn't changed. It's just one of our little technical issues that we often have. Is how on earth
it's technical, but it's up here.
Too many screens, but we're getting there. Anyway, sorry to interrupt, James. Carry on.
No problem. Thanks for pointing it out. Absolutely. Now, as I said, Angus had covered this story last week, so we won't spend a great deal of time on it, but I think that it's important to look at a few important dates and the fight for Sikhs to look at the changes in the U.S. military code. Now, with the religious expression in South Asia, as I said, now we're looking at something totally different, and that is the hundreds of observant Sikhs serving in the U.S. military had their careers and identities threatened by a single announcement. As we talk about this, we know that it was this speech by two top military leaders by U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. He declared an end to what he called superficial individual expression, effectively banning most beards for service members. If you want a beard, he said, join special forces. If not, shave. Hegseth stated openly mocking service members with accommodations and names such as beardos. Now, of course, this is on the heels of some very important changes that have taken decades to change over. Let's take a look here quickly on the screen here, pre-1981, and we're talking going back to World War I, where Sikhs could wear and were respected with their articles of faith. And as I said, that goes back to World War I up until 1981. A policy that really should not have been changed at the time, but it was. And in that decision that was made, that was pushing service members to a different standard and to different levels of acceptance. And this was a preemptive ban that was established, effectively barring observant Sikhs from service. Now, if you fast forward to 2010, the first accommodations were granted, and that was Captain Lambda and Major Calcy. They received a case by case waiver, and that set a new precedent to start allowing and recognize the significance of these articles of faith within the Sikh community, but also as a stretch to other different faiths as well. So, a big, big change there. In 2017, we saw an Army directive that was in place from 2017 to 2003, and that was what they called a strong presumption of approval. And that was created in the Army, streamlining the process for the exemptions for Sikhs to basically wear their turbans, have their facial hair, and respect their customs, their culture, and their religion. Now, in 2020, a big change happened that the US Air Force policy actually updated. So they changed the actual policy as opposed to looking for approval processes. But it was still fairly similar to the previous one that was implemented by the Army. And they had started to facilitate the religious accommodation, but not at a strict level of required approvals, as you saw in the Army. Now, in 2023, a huge event happened that Private First Class Jaskarat Singh graduated from boot camp with Articles of Faith, and that was a historical breakthrough. So it shows the timeline where the progression and advancement for the better is happening until, of course, this September, just recently, when Hegseth said no beardos, and that's his new policy, and that's a widespread ban on or reimposed, creating uncertainty and threatening the careers of hundreds. Now, we're talking lifetime service members in the military who will have to either give up on something that is truly sacred to them personally and religiously, culturally, and otherwise, or give up their careers. And that should be a non-starter. That shouldn't even be opening any type of conversation. And I find that it is just really taking back the military to an old style, to an old train of thought, and also will exclude a lot of people from joining the military at a time when they really need increased enrollment, not the decrease. And I think that it's also going to have far-reaching implications to other religious exemptions or exceptions and allowances. And I think that this is just the tip of the iceberg going forward. So I hope that that enough pressure can be made. And there's been pressure being put on not only by military members, but as far away as India, where the Sikh organizations are speaking out, but they are also asking the foreign minister to step in and put pressure on the US to reverse this policy, as it clearly is impacting the Sikh diaspora here in Canada, or sorry, in the US, and that is of utmost concern. Now, as we take a look at that, of course, we know that that is just a big change and it needs to happen soon, but whether it will, that we'll have to watch and see. Now, as we continue on here, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to skip the story about Canada because I have that in there for our fans on Substack, but it's just a very brief update on things that we've already discussed on the show, so that's great. And now we're going to take a look at some activism in the UK. Now, when we look at this, of course, we can see the color, the acceptance, the happiness, but it's a divisive landscape. Now, the Sikh community in the UK is getting an overrepresentation, if you will, bear with me on that statement, in terms of their level of representation in Parliament. Now, with it being the home to one of the oldest Sikh diasporas in the world, the community is navigating a different kind of challenge, and that's translating electoral success into substantive political power. With that said, the number of Sikh members in Parliament, as I said, has risen, and that's up to 11, making them significantly overrepresented in the House of Commons relative to their population. So I hope that clarifies the earlier statement. Now, with the recent report from the Sikh Federation UK, they're offering a sharp internal critique expressing concern that several of those MPs have actually been silent or uninterested on Sikh issues, or at least key issues that involve the Sikh diaspora, with some advocates suggesting that one or two may be more interested in appeasing the Indian authorities. Again, a concern of the community. Now, this signals a new stage in the community's political maturation in the fact that they are focusing, or the focus is shifting from a simply elected member to holding them actually accountable and advocating for them to be involved in the community's interests. In response to the complex domestic and international environment, the Federation has undertaken a major strategic reorganization, and it is adopting what is called the Panj Pardani. And that, for us unfamiliar with it, is leadership by five system, placing Western-born Sikh professionals at the forefront. It has launched the Sikh Federation International, a new global wing designed to coordinate campaigns on issues like transnational repression. But one of the first major initiatives that they've been working on is the global wing designed to coordinate campaigns on issues such as the transnational repression, but also coordinated international campaigns to have India officially declared a rogue state. It's a move that shows a community that's evolving from an ethnic interest group to a sophisticated political actor on the world stage, laying, I think, some great groundwork and foundational work for what will hopefully soon be Khalistan. Now, while some of the diaspora communities are reacting to the external threats, the Sikh community in Singapore is taking a remarkably proactive and internally focused approach to its future. This is exciting to see because it really plays to a new level of interaction and forward thinking. Now, while of course we look at this from all points, but let's take a look what happened on September the 6th of last month that we kind of missed at the time. And that is that the Singapore Khalsa Association hosted its inaugural National Day Dialogue, bringing together 80 community members from students to institutional leaders. Now, we did talk about the multi-faith gatherings that happened, but this one is specific to the Sikh community and the theme of the Sikh community yesterday, today, and tomorrow. The unique workshop was modeled after what they call bank, bin, and garage. I think it's a great concept that everybody could put in their personal lives too, personally. But the participants were asked to identify traditions to preserve, discard, or rework for the future. So that's the bank, the bin, and the garage. With the intergenerational format, that brought critical issues to the forefront. The youth voiced a concern over an educational disadvantage because the Punjabi language is not offered as a higher mother tongue, and the Sikh students miss out on bonus points crucial for admission to the top junior colleges. Elders, meanwhile, pointed to the evolving needs of an aging population, such as caretaking and social isolation. The dialogue reveals that the subtle pressures of being a model minority and how to preserve the distinct identity while succeeding in a competitive mainstream society. So that is a very interesting look, but I really like the way that they've categorized that, and they are looking towards the future, but involving all generations, which I think is a big key. Now, for the small Sikh community in Japan, the challenges are not of political confrontation, but of quiet existential navigation of one of the world's most homogenous societies. Yes, Japan is that. This struggle is set against a backdrop of a national demographic crisis that has paradoxically fueled a rise in anti-immigration sentiment. In a society that prizes uniformity, the distinct visual identity of a turban Sikh man presents a constant challenge. Sikhs have reported intense social pressure to assimilate, from being told to cut their hair to secure a factory job, to children being excluded from school sports because their turbans violate the uniform codes. Now, this quiet struggle is powerfully humanized in the story of a student. He is Gurswak Singh, and his parents fled religious persecution in India over 2 decades ago. But for 19 years, the Japanese government has repeatedly denied his father's asylum claims, leaving the family in a state of perpetual limbo. With that said, of course, without legal status, health insurance, or the right to work, his father has been held in immigration detention for over 2 years. Their story is one that reveals an invisible form of marginalization and a human consequence hidden within that restrictive immigration system. As we just catch the screen up for you that are watching here for our graphics, there we go. Now, in an era where Sikh identity is often defined by political struggle, I wanted to bring up a documentary that came out a few years ago. And I've seen parts and clips of this documentary, and I'm bringing it up because I wanted to ask the viewers if you have seen this, or if you can direct me as to where to find it online. I've checked all the streaming platforms that they say it's supposed to be on, but I can't find it in the searches. So I'm really looking to check this out because I've seen some great clips of it. It's called Under the Turban, and this actually started by a child who asked their parents about the Sikh religion and about the turbans and other articles of faith. Now, this 9-year-old was Zara Garcha, and when she asked her parents, what does it mean to be Sikh, instead of a simple answer, the family actually embarked on a 5-year global journey, and they went to find out together, what does it mean? They traveled through Italy, the UK, India, Canada, the US, showcasing the rich diversity of global Sikh experiences. And I thought that that was just an amazing way, if you have the opportunity to just take 5 years and go. I thought it was wonderful. Now, the viewers of the episodes have met Sikh cheesemaker in Parma, Italy, a fashion blogger in London, a spirited motorcycle club that we've talked to here in Vancouver on the show, Angus. So again, it really was an international lesson for this 9-year-old and her parents, which was just amazing. Now, the film's mission was to educate and counter the prejudice that has tragically affected the community. And what they really looked at was particularly in the post-9/11 era. Now, that mission is brought to sharp focus during a Gurdwara visit in Oak Creek, Wisconsin, the site of a horrific 2012 mass shooting. So again, it was really an eye-opening experience for Zara, who was speaking with survivors at that Wisconsin Gurdwara, as well as all of the other experiences and lessons that she was able to derive. So if you have been able to find Under the Turban online streaming, I would love you to reach out and let us know here at Perspectives. Now, I will quickly just jump on the final story here so we can get on with the rest of the show as well and not kill up too much time. Look at this beautiful hoodie, Angus. And it is the brainchild of someone named Nivaj Singh. He's a 16-year-old social entrepreneur from the diaspora. He was actually inspired by a United Sikhs Leadership Summit, and he co-founded Asal Apparel, and that's a youth-led clothing brand. His flagship project, the Save Punjab initiative, is a modern reinterpretation of the timeless Sikh principle of seva, and that, of course, we know means self-service. Now, in response to the devastating floods in Punjab, he designed a special line of hoodies, committing 90% of the proceeds to United Sikhs flood relief, and that is helping with not just the flood relief itself, but rebuilding efforts on the ground. His initiative, though, is more than a fundraiser. It's actually a bridge connecting diaspora youth with urgent humanitarian needs in the homeland. It's a testament to an endearing spirit. A community that, despite facing all kinds of challenges and profound challenges at that, they continue to find innovative ways to connect, to serve, and to carry the legacy of resilience forward, Angus. So again, at the bottom here, we have posted a website that if you are interested, you can actually go and check out the site as well as these hoodies. And again, 90% of the money that's raised here goes to the cause. So what an amazing thing. Young youth just really making a difference in the world around them. So again, what is more Sikhi than that, Angus? I don't know. How about you?
Yeah, I think what a marvelous idea. Well done. I mean, it just highlights it's almost this genetic instinct of the Sikh community. They are entrepreneurial by nature, and of course, Seva is so ingrained in the culture. Again, it's just they're always looking right across the diaspora, and of course within the Punjab itself. They're always looking ways to firstly commercially create and build, and secondly, how can they serve their fellow human beings in any way? And I think this just really encapsulates into one simple story, just the whole spirit of Sikhi. So well done to him. I did want to, in fact, talking about the young. Actually, I just wanted to pick up a couple of your stories. The first story, which I thought was really interesting, was the Singapore community, who are looking to. And I love this. Was it? I can't read. My glasses are so bad I can't read my own writing. Is it bank, bin, and garage? What a great idea! And this actually, I think this is very interesting, because the biggest challenge to religions in modern society in the 21st century is how do they continue? Religion is sort of fading out in many parts of the world, particularly in the Western world to some degree, because with technology, with the advancement of society, atheism or agnosticism, likewise, are advancing, and religions are tending to sort of almost fade away. It's not strictly true in certain parts of the world, but certainly here in the UK, it's definitely happening. And I've noticed. For example, the Christian church is really declined significantly here in the UK, as people have just sort of, again, embraced modern society, technology, etc. And then, of course, religion. The old traditional Christianity, for example, has just sort of faded away, despite having very Christian backgrounds, even at school. So an interesting symptom of that, certainly in the Christian church, has been the congregations now in these beautiful old churches that we have. We have churches that are literally 1,000 years old, that now on a Sunday, our traditional day of worship, just lie empty, or there might be literally 4 or 5 people who are sort of 70, 80 years old sitting there in the congregation, and that's it. And the vicar is preaching to an empty church. Yet you go down the road and you will find these new churches that have sprung up, particularly from the young. They created these new churches, and they are totally different. They play music, they play loud music. There's lots of singing, lots of dancing, lots of sort of waving of the arms, clapping of the hands, whatever. They're very different, but they're very young, very vibrant. And this is what's happened in the Christian church, is that the old style church, the traditional dinosaurs, let's call them, are dying out. The old traditional Christian church is just disappeared. I speak specifically here in the UK, and I think to some degree it might be happening in North America, but certainly I know it's happening here in the UK.
It certainly is, yes.
Yeah, the old church is dying. People are just not interested. It's too old-fashioned. It doesn't appeal to the young. If you're a young person, why would you want to go sit in these cold, musty old churches when down the road there's a new church that's sprung up, that's warm, that's friendly, it's full of young. They're all singing, dancing, clapping their hands, and all this sort of stuff. And that's where the future is. So Singapore is on this, and I think this is a really interesting debate that needs to be had. Where it isn't being had is, how do you evolve your faith for the 21st century? Because the 21st century is unique. It's so different from earlier centuries. We had centuries and centuries of almost no technological development, or very little technological development. Yeah, we had the agricultural revolution, the industrial revolution, which did revolutionize society to some degree, but they are nothing compared to how society has changed. Change is happening exponentially with the digital revolution, the AI revolution. Our society is changing so quickly that religions are being left behind, and the young are entering a world that we can't even begin to imagine, our generation. And this is where I think the challenge is for the traditional churches, the traditional religions like Sikhi are going to have to wake up a little. And this applies very much in the Punjab, just as much as it does in the West, is if you want to survive for another 50 years, literally another 50 years, because change is happening that quickly. You need to go with the change. You need to evolve and adapt your religion. Now, the core doesn't need to change. The fundamental message doesn't need to change, but the way it is presented might need to change. And it's interesting that Singapore have suddenly woken up to this. And I wonder, again, across the whole Sikh faith, are there leaders in the Sikh faith? And I'll leave this up to our audience, who will have obviously a much better idea and much better knowledge on this. But I do hope the leaders back in the SGPC, the Akal Takht and what have you, they are on this. They realise that they are going to have to evolve as their congregation, their audience, their members change with society. that they don't leave the Sikh faith behind. They must the Sikh faith must adapt and modernise. That's really the key word. It must modernise and keep up with the 21st century. But interesting, an interesting story, that one. Now, the other one I want to just jump back to, which I will talk to some degree again myself, MPs in the UK. Yeah, there's an awful lot going on here in the UK, and wow, politics is going through a bit of a seismic change here in the UK, as indeed it is across the Western world. We've had this very left-wing sort of governments right across Europe, North America for quite some time. And they have brought immigration, of course, is the big issue. And this illegal immigration and this huge amounts of immigration has changed Western society significantly over the last 30, 40, 50 years. And I saw actually, and here in the UK, just as an example, in the 28 years up until, or 20-something, 22 years up until, let me get my numbers right, 1997. So that's 28 years. So the 28 years pre-1997, here in the UK, we had 3 million people coming into the UK. So our population grew by 3 million in those 28 years. In the 28 years since 1997, our population grew by 11 million. Now, we were a population of about 50, 60 million. So 11 million is a massive increase, but without the increase of doctor surgeries, the infrastructure, etc. And this has caused huge problems, social problems. This is why we are now having this huge backlash, this lurch to the right, politically speaking. Because people are saying, look, no, we've got to close our borders. So this in turn has created this seismic shift in politics. And of course, the danger here, and this affects the whole of our audience in so many different ways, is that, of course, we have the extreme right, we have the extreme left who have been pushing this immigration agenda, but we have the extreme right who are pushing against it. And both of them are pushing by definition to extreme levels, and the rest of us caught in the middle are now being sort of pushed and pulled between these two ideas, these two policies. But of course, people are now lurching to the right and starting being captured by the extreme right. And of course, this is why we're seeing an increase in hate crimes, not just here in the UK, but across the whole of the Western world. Because people are now getting so angry about immigration that they are now turning stupidly upon our populations, our minority populations that have been here for generations, that have been here for, in fact, many of them have actually been born in our own countries. So they're here in the UK, they're as British as you and I. Well, not you, James, obviously, but you but you and our audience who live in Britain, and that's the problem. And again, when I come back to the politics of it, yes, you talked about the Sikh Federation. There is a problem here, is that, yes, there's been some fabulous grassroots movements that have now elected 11 Sikh MPs. But of course, how effective are our Sikh MPs? Clearly, they are not effective enough. They are not advocating enough for our British Sikh society, our Sikh community. And again, the problem is we have the most unpopular government in the history of the United Kingdom. Keir Starmer is now the most unpopular Prime Minister in history. Absolutely. Since before records began. I suspect he's not going to last until spring. We've got local elections coming up in spring. He'll be gone by then, there's no question. But the Labour Party, the governing party, has deeply betrayed not just the Sikh community, but the whole British population. This is why they're so unpopular. Right. And of course, the 11 Sikh MPs, the big question is, firstly, are they representing their constituents? Are they representing their Sikh community well enough? Well, secondly, there is a danger that we do know that Keir Starmer has surrounded himself by yes men. Keir Starmer is not a socialist. It's very clear. He's a technocrat. He doesn't represent the working class like the Labour Party is supposed to do. He represents some globalist cabal. That's who he is. And in fact, one could even question, does he have any policies at all? But ultimately, he does not. Him and the ruling elite in Westminster do not represent the British population. They do not represent the Sikh people. So I wonder if our 11 Sikh MPs are trying to be vocal. They are trying their best to raise the issues for the Sikh community with the British Prime Minister, with central office, and they're just being ignored because that's what's going on, because the government are ignoring everybody. They're ignoring their backbenchers, as they're called, their other MPs. There are so many Labour MPs who are in power in government who are being ignored by their very own leader. This is why Starmer is so unpopular, why the government is so unpopular, is because those MPs, including our Sikh MPs, I believe are being completely ignored. that all the policies that they're representing, the people they represent, Starmer is on his own trajectory, he has his own agenda, his own policies, which I would argue, and many others believe, represent the globalists, the World Economic Forum. They do not represent the working class, normal supporters of the Labour Party. And that's the concern, James, is that our government here in the UK is running out of control, running out of accountability. We have 4 more years, sadly, of this government. I suspect we will have a general election before 4 years. I suspect within 2 years we will have a general election, because our government is literally falling apart, and there is literally rioting in our streets occurring on a regular basis. The protests are rising. The term civil war has been thrown around even in mainstream media now. That's how bad things are getting here in the UK, is that people are getting so angry, not just the Sikh community, but more and more people are getting deeply, deeply angry because our government is running out of accountability, running out of control, and it's a deeply worrying situation, James.
Seems like we're seeing a lot of change and a lot of upset, a lot of upheaval when it comes to political, replacements or forcing them out. I mean, we've seen it recently here with Trudeau. And, it reminds me of an old time where they had that saying, if you broke it, you bought it. And there were no exchanges and refunds on your politicians for 4 years. But it seems like that policy is changing across the world, Angus. Here, there, and elsewhere.
Yeah, and that actually is the problem that we have here in the UK, is that we have this deeply unpopular government that was actually only elected by default because they weren't the opposition. Yeah. So they're actually the number of people who voted for them was minute. It's something like it was less than 20% of the population voted for our government. And this is the failing of the way the democratic system works. Is that we have a government that actually the vast majority did not vote for, and yet we cannot get them out for 4 years. But yeah, we can't. You can't change the system just because you don't like the current government. Is that we have to give them chance, and this is the sort of almost this catch-22 situation that we're in. Is that we have to respect democracy, but we have a government that is deeply undemocratic, running out of control. How the hell do we get them out democratically? And this is why the term civil war is actually being thrown around. So that literally the only way to remove this government is by physical force, and of course we don't want that, and I don't think it ever will come to that. But ultimately, yeah, it is very concerning, James. So dangerous times.
It is, yeah.
Right.
Let's don't wreck the beautiful architecture that I've yet to come and explore.
Indeed, absolutely. We have a beautiful country in the UK. Let's not wreck it. Okay, James. Let's move on. I'm going to jump across now to. I'm going to come back to British politics in a moment, but I just want to cover one story in the Punjab, because a few days ago, October the 3rd. This marked a really important anniversary. October 3rd, 2021, 4 years ago. A terrible incident happened. I'm going to play a video, and I'm just going to stop it because it is a very graphic video, and our audience, if there are young in our audience, look away for a moment. I'm just going to stop it, hopefully at the key moment. Right, and then I'm just going to jump ahead. That vehicle, I'll talk about in a moment. I'm just going to jump ahead to the aftermath. That was a vehicle that mowed. This is a totally graphic video that portrayed an event. This is the aftermath.
We're not seeing it on the screen here, Angus.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Jen. Sorry, apologies. Talking about technical issues. Of course, our audience wouldn't have seen that. Let me play that video again for our audience. I was showing the wrong screen. Here we go. Right. Right. As I say, I'm just going to skip ahead. That vehicle there that you can see there. This is the vehicle driven by somebody I'll talk about in a moment. Of course, this is a protest, and I'm just going to skip ahead to the aftermath because I don't want to show the actual event itself. It's pretty awful. So that's a terrible aftermath of this event. So what happened? October the 3rd, 2021. That vehicle was driven by the son of an Indian MP. And he used that vehicle, that Jeep, to mow down dozens of attendees of these people. These were farmers protesting in Lakhimpur Kheri up in Uttar Pradesh. And they were part of the 2021 farmers' protest. That incident that we've just shown there killed 9 and left many more injured. Now, Ashish Monu Mishra was identified as the driver of that vehicle. He carried it out, apparently, to deter what he said were ongoing protests against 3 exploitative farming laws implemented by India's BJP government at the time. Now, 4 Sikh male protesters died directly from that incident just there when he drove into them. And then another journalist, Raman Kashyap, whose father says he was shot in the incident afterwards, and allegedly 3 more BJP workers that were amongst the crowd also died during the attack, as well as a driver of one of the vehicles, although information on how they died actually was never made clear. Now, in response to this incident, the local authorities blocked the local internet in the area, as they tend to do in situations. They completely closed down communications and then deliberately tried to suppress information being shared, and particularly tried to stop this video going viral. They were too late. It did go viral. Now, the driver of this vehicle, Ashish Mishra, is the son of a BJP Home Affairs Minister, a guy called Ajay Mishra, whose presence in the area was being protesters said against, because he was in the area and this protest was there to try and block him being there. Last month, I'm reading from an article written at the time. So the previous month, in September, Sikh farmers had been threatened against protesting in the area, with nationalists stating that they would treat Sikh attendees worse than the 1984 Sikh genocide. So the local Sikh farmers said, we're going to protest. And they said, you do that, we will treat you like we treated you in 1984. That was the public statement made by local activists, Hindutva activists. And lo and behold, this incident occurred. So eyewitnesses at the time said that Mishra escaped the area with support from the police. The authorities, according to a news report at the time, said the authorities also ensured that the culprits will be arrested within 8 days, and that the inquiry of the entire incident will be carried out by a retired High Court judge. Now, despite this, many were sceptical at the time of the intention of Indian authorities to carry out justice. Ajay Mishra has already claimed his son was not at the protest, despite the fact that all these witnesses there saw him and said it was him. Indian nationalists and media then went into overdrive after this, as they do, flooding social media and publishing media reports which blurred the issue, which tried to bury the issue and suggested the whole protest was a Khalistani extremist event. Well, again, you've seen the video. Did you see any violence going on? Did you see any extremism going on? It was a load of peaceful protesters. Who were the real terrorists there? I think you can make up your own mind. And then Jas Singh of the Sikh Press Association at the time said, the language and tone of reporting, this is interesting because the Western media reported on this incident at the time, particularly the left-wing media. And Jas Singh said, the language and tone of reporting from Western media is still incredibly biased. Even after nearly a year of regular state-facilitated violence against protesters, there is video evidence of a government convoy mowing down protesters. Yep, there it is. You've seen it yourselves. Yet reports from most mainstream Western media outlets portray the incident as some kind of violent clash between opposing sides. Well, it's very clear who the instigator of a violent attack was here. And again, we talk about two-tier justice and who the terrorists are. These are questions that we often talk about on the show. In India, who actually are the real terrorists? We do know here. Now, if I tell you now, 4 years later, and again, we talk about two-tier justice, 4 years on, Mishra has still not been sentenced for this incident. He is actually in prison. He was imprisoned, but he's free to leave prison at the weekends. And as in fact, the Sikh Press Association themselves, they made a statement themselves. They said, as is well documented, India's elite are often given incredible privileges while supposedly imprisoned, as reported for Mishra, son of senior BJP MP Ajay Mishra. The incident is another example of injustice Sikhs face in India, where countless political prisoners languish in jails indefinitely, the Bandi Sikhs that we talk about, and some for decades, based on spurious allegations, so they remain without charge. Jagdal Singh Johal, Amritpal Singh, they all trip off the tongue so easily now. Meanwhile, a broad daylight, barefaced terror attack, witnessed by dozens, sees comparatively very little legal consequences due to the perpetrator's government links. And the trial continues amid witness intimidation accusations, including an assassination attempt on one key witness. So, James, again, we talk about who are the real terrorists here. Well, I think, again, this video just displays, again, who the real terrorists are. I'm just going to play one more video once again, just to wrap this story out. This is a protest that actually happened last year. But, again, let me just play you this one. And more of the same. But basically, this is a protest. It was a year ago, but this just perfectly summarises this whole story. You've got a group of peaceful Khalistan campaignhters there. I think this is in Canada, James, this one. But you've got a group of Hindutva protesters there. But what are the Hindutva protesters shouting? They're shouting pro-Bishnoi chants. And there you go. You ask this question, who are the real terrorists here? Well, Bishnoi has now been declared a terrorist organisation. You've got Hindutva protesters there shouting pro-Bishnoi things. And again, just to summarise this, we look at Bishnoi, Lawrence Bishnoi. Where is Lawrence Bishnoi now? Yes, he's in prison in Gujarat. He's treated like a VIP. So again, we talk about two-tier justice. We talk about who are the real terrorists here. I think we've answered our own question there, James.
I think it's quite clear, and I believe that might be US there with the American flag in the background, but who knows?
There might be Americans protesting in Canada, James. You never know.
We see them here too, because, hey, we are a friendly bunch in Canada for the most part.
In fact, I'm looking at that shoulder
you're
badge.
Absolutely right, Angus. When it comes to the government links and the government connections, it seems that there is definitely at least a two-tiered criminal justice system in India, and maybe even three-tiered, because there are a lot of people that don't face any justice for atrocities committed. And I mean, we can go back and talk about 1984. We can talk about many things that have happened since then in which people have not been held accountable in any way, shape, or form because of their links to the government or to the RSS or to RAW and other agencies. So again, it is definitely a sad state when, the justice system doesn't look at the totality of a crime and impact on society, but instead they look at that, push it aside and say, who are our friends here and how can we help them?
Indeed. And I'm just going to, in the interest of time, just move on to my second story now. I'm going to circle straight back to when we're talking about the British MPs. Again, and the Sikh Press Association, they've also likewise made a statement. We've got, another issue, and it's coming back to this whole sort of hate crime, the rise of hate crimes and the seismic change in British politics. And in fact, this social change that we're having, there's really being brought in by our successive governments. We had 14 years of a Conservative government who failed not just the Sikh community, but the whole British society, followed by a Labour government who've just gone exponentially worse than the Conservative government. Again, it's just this failure of our successive governments, and very much for some reason it's a British problem. Our governments have just got worse and worse, and again, the Sikh community have had to stand up and say, look, we've got a problem as a community. And this problem, again, linked again to the rising hate crimes. In fact, what I'll do, I'm just going to show another video. Have a look at this video.
Thanks for joining us this lunchtime. I'm Laxmi Gopal. A Sikh temple in Shepherd's Bush has installed CCTV, iron gates and a full-time security guard because of growing fears and targeted attacks on Sikhs elsewhere in the country. Met Police data shows that in summer this year there was an above-average rise in hate crime, with more than 2,000 incidents a month. The Khalsa Jatha Gurdwara, which is the oldest in Western Europe, is calling on the government to give Gurdwaras the same help with security costs as mosques and synagogues get. Alpa Patel has this report.
And then off goes the report. But that is our mainstream BBC news report saying we have a problem because our Gurdwaras are under attack through hate crimes. They are literally, they're very vulnerable. But the key question here is, and again, we've touched on this before, why on earth are synagogues representing the Jewish community and mosques representing the Islamic community? They are given up to £40,000 to spend on security, to beef up their security against potential hate crimes. And yet, for some reason, Gurdwaras are not offered the same level of support. So again, it raises this two-tier question. We talk about two-tier justice has been a term that we've thrown around here in the UK. We seem to have two-tier justice here in the UK. Well, we've got two-tier issues here for the Sikh groups. And I said in the introduction, our Sikh community here in the UK, for some reason, are treated like second-class citizens. The Islamic community are treated as first class. The Islamic community get all the attention. Any hate crime against a Muslim is headline news. Anything that happens in the Islamic community is immediately headline news. The government makes statements. The government immediately straight onto social media or on the mainstream media having interviews, making big statements, grand statements. Yet, any incident, any hate crime that happens in the Sikh community, it just barely gets mentioned. I mean, thank heavens that at least the BBC are on it, as indeed they have been, and to their credit. But the government remains deeply quiet about this because for some reason, again, it's the question that we continually ask, James, is why does the British government not want to protect and represent our Sikh community? And again, it comes back to the question, we have 11 Sikh MPs. Why are those 11 Sikh MPs, firstly, not being louder within the government about protecting their own community? But secondly, if they are, why is the government ignoring them? And just to tie this up completely, we talked about how your own foreign minister, James, in Canada, met with Jai Shankar. Well, our own new foreign secretary, a lady called Yvette Cooper, and I have to say she's absolutely hopeless as a politician, has been for a very long time. Yet she's one of these people who just keeps being promoted and promoted well beyond her clear abilities. But anyway, she's our new foreign secretary. And she met, yes, Dr. Jai Shankar again. She's had her turn with Dr. Jai Shankar. And the question was, did she raise the issue of Jagtar Singh Johal? We don't know because there's been no statement. She might have done, she might not. It's very clear she probably didn't, because if she did, she at least would have made a statement about it. But once again, sadly, our Foreign Secretary, she superseded David Lammy, our previously utterly useless, incompetent Foreign Secretary. So now we've got the useless Yvette Cooper as Foreign Secretary, who's met her counterpart, and did she raise Jagtar Singh Johal? One of the biggest issues as a British citizen, one of our biggest foreign issues, I would certainly argue, that we have a British citizen who's been imprisoned illegally for 8 years, and not a statement, not a word about it. So, James, when we talk about two-tier justice, we talk about two-tier treatment. It's very clear our British Sikh community are treated as second-class citizens, James.
Absolutely. And I mean, when you look at the geopolitics of the world, with the article there that we covered earlier when we were talking about Japan, and if you read the full article on our Substack, you'll see that they are seeing a big influx of racially motivated crime as well, especially targeting immigrants and all of that. But when you look at the totality of the international stage, a lot of these crimes are not being prosecuted, or at least as severely as they should be in a lot of nations. Now, when you look at this particular instance, Angus, I think that when people are saying, can we get worse politicians? Can we get dumber politicians? Can we get more useless politicians? The politicians take it as a challenge.
Yes.
And they exceed to meet that challenge. So again, it is just appalling that citizens are not being protected. And she comes back after this meeting and not a word. That's horrific. And I say that as a Canadian from the outside looking in, but again, we would be disgusted if it was a Canadian national held in an India prison and still there after years with no real legal process.
And unfortunately, we don't really have the time for the discussion, but I often question, is our modern democracy the right way to govern the Western world? Because it must be failing, because we have, here in the UK, we have a population of about 70 million. Is Keir Starmer the best person among 70 million people to lead our country? No, he's not. So we have a system that is delivering up politicians that are clearly incompetent, useless, just the wrong people to be leading our nations. And actually, you could say that about the United States. Was it 300 million? Canada, probably the same. We have these large populations. Absolutely. And we end up with politicians who are basically, well, they have their own agenda, but they're not the best people to lead us. And again, you've got to blame the system. Anyway, sadly, James, we don't have the time for that discussion because that in itself is a big discussion. But we'll have to move on to our comments column. We had loads of comments. Thank you to our wonderful audience, as always, for all your comments. We're going to rush through these again because we're running out of time. Mountain and Forest starts us off. Yes, we had this the defacement, the graffiti of the Gandhi statue in London the other day. Mountain and Forest, this is an interesting one. Sikhs don't have time for graffiti. RSS is anti-Sikh. It's likely it was a false flag. Yes, we've had this before. The mandirs, whether in Australia, the US, the Hindu temples have been defaced with graffiti. But we do know, as the Australian police uncovered, it was false flag. It was Hindutva activists trying to blame Sikhs. Maybe this one is the same, James.
Absolutely. And I was actually speaking with somebody in Lethbridge, Alberta the other day who is not Sikh, but really had the same very opinion on this same topic. We got talking about it. And yeah, we talked about all these false flag events.
Indeed, so could well be. Stuff to muffins. Yes, you want us to talk about Balwant Singh Rajwana. Now, Rajwana was... sorry, I beg your pardon, I'm looking at the wrong... Oh, yes, it is the right comment. Yes, yeah. So Balwant Singh Rajwana, he was convicted for the assassination of Beant Singh in 1995, I think it was. He was the former Chief Minister of Punjab. He oversaw the dreadful extrajudicial killings of the 80s and 90s. So as a result, he was assassinated by Balwant Singh Rajwana. But Rajwana was sentenced to death in 2007, but he still remains in jail. And his actual sentence has been commuted with all sorts of legal challenges, etc. But as you say, they want to now hang him. Timing is interesting. Yeah, the movement by the BJP against the Sikh community, against any Sikh prisoners, whatever. Yeah, it's interesting why they're now suddenly, after so many years, suddenly they actually want to carry out his sentence. Who knows why? But more concerningly, you say 50 battalions of the border security force have been moved to the Punjab, not for the flood relief, but you think something big is planned. Well, this is a bit worrying, James.
Well, it is not surprising, though, Angus. Something that the international community, I'm sure, will be, blocked out of. And that's where it's going to be important for our viewers who are using VPNs and otherwise to watch us from India. Keep us apprised on anything that's going on that you see on the ground so that we can report it as well. Because I have a feeling that the mainstream media is going to be fighting to try and get the facts as they are when it happens, if something happens.
Good point. Yeah, the Godi media will certainly never mention it. The Western media probably won't pick it up. So if you're in the Punjab, let us know. Let us, particularly if you speak English, just send us an email. Let me just flag that up for you there at the bottom. Send us an email at message@satledgetv.com if you've got any intelligence locally that you think we should broadcast. And next set of comments. Yes, Kanwar Bir Singh says... actually, talking about perfect segue there. Talking about the Godi media. Yes, you actually made this comment that any news channel reporter bringing out the truth about the government's criminal activities, they're shut down or they're interfered with by jammers, coercive methods. Yes, this is something we talk about regularly, James, is that there is no free press in India. India languages something like 159th in the World Free Press Index, just above North Korea and Russia. India does not have a free press. And if you try and hold the government to account as a journalist, you know what happens? You end up in jail, James.
Absolutely. And I mean, my personal accounts, all my accounts are shadow banned and throttled. And, it could be Russia, it could be India, could be China, it could be President Trump. Who knows? I pissed them all off.
Yes,
but I'm reporting the truth, so that's all that matters.
Absolutely. But thank heavens and touch wood, we're still allowed to report the truth here in the UK. So anyway, thank you, Kanwar Bir Singh, for basically saying what we know. Absolutely, you're right. Now, Critics Corner, a brief return with Universe Transport says, Khalistan will never ever become reality. I think you mean Khalistan. It's New Bharat. You Farangi, that means you foreigners. That's a Hindi word. Save yourself from Mullah and Khotistani. Canada's messed up. Anything go up will come down. Anything that goes up will obviously come down. Both of you are clowns. Well, we're often called clowns. We're here to entertain and educate. So thank you for the compliment. But yes, but more seriously, yeah. So we should have brought our red noses. Indeed. And clearly, a Hindutva activist here, as you say, clearly anti-Islam. And you're saying, well, actually, we've got to be careful here because there is an element of truth in this comment. Is that yes, there is an extreme element of Islam, and that is what the West is worried about. The West are genuinely concerned about this extremism that's coming from the Islamic world that is now moving into the West. But of course, the Hindutva are deeply anti-Islam. They fear this influx of Muslims, and this is the battle that's currently going on in India. And actually, arguably, this is happening, being reflected here in the West, is that there is a huge concern amongst Western populations about this huge influx of the Muslim world, and there is this fear that the Muslims are here to turn the Western world into a big caliphate, as indeed the extremists. That is what the Muslim Brotherhood are about. This is an organisation that is now banned in many countries across the world, not here in the UK, interestingly, but many countries have banned the Muslim Brotherhood, who have this very agenda. So again, it's not a black and white argument, James, lots of shades of grey.
Absolutely, and let's keep in mind we're focusing those comments towards the extremist groups, not the moderates, not the regular everyday people, whether they are in the Hindu religion or Muslim. But again, these extremist groups pose a real and potential threat.
Indeed. So thank you, Universe Transport, for your comment. It did appear in Critics Corner, but there's a big genuine debate to be had about that, because there's lots of interesting points in there. Yeah. Sadly, we don't have the time. But thank you for the comment anyway. And then final set, Sukhwant says, world knows in 1984 thousands of Sikh families were killed by organised Hindu terror. Yeah, 1984, again, we talk about it almost on a daily basis. Organised Hindu terror, again, we've got to be careful here. It was Hindu extremists. It's not your average Hindu. Don't forget, in 1984 genocide, many Hindu families took in fleeing Sikh families to protect them from these Hindutva extremists. So we must always target the extremists in these things, James, as you just rightly said.
Absolutely. And I mean, the risk that those families took by taking in the Sikh families as well should not be understated either. And they're truly heroic actions at that point. Indeed.
Amakara, appreciated your comment. We talked about Mahatma Gandhi. If he was alive today, he'd be on the Epstein list, James.
So, or would Epstein be on his list? I'm not sure which way, but yes.
Yeah, absolutely. There you go. And TC's comment, I won't read it out because it's slightly rude, but anyway, you can read it. But if you want to know what that means, go watch the podcast I did. I think it was Dr. Graywell. We talked about Mahatma Gandhi and what he got up to in his private life, which was quite interesting. It certainly didn't ally, let's say, with his public image. Narinder Sidhu and Bachchan Kaur Bachchan. Khalistan Zindabad. I love you, Khalistan. Punjab. Khalistan Zindabad, James. We always like to finish on a positive note.
We always do, and we appreciate when the audience joins us in that endeavor.
Absolutely we do. But there, unfortunately, we must leave perspectives for another day. That is it for another show. Thanks so much for watching. Do keep your comments coming in. Thank you to all of you who contributed. We love your comments. Do let us know things that you think we should talk about, as many of you have been doing. Thank you for that. Do message us directly at message@satlugetv.com if there's anything that you want to, if there's any links you want to send us or whatever. Do preferably do them in English, because we still don't speak Punjabi, sadly. But anyway, we must bring things to a close. It's a goodbye from me. It is a goodbye from James.
Stay safe, everyone.
You have, of course, been watching Perspectives. We will hopefully see you tomorrow.